Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have swatches for you from the brand Color Gossip. So I have like close to 30 polishes to share with you today. Therefore, instead of doing the full swatches, I am going to do my individual kind of swatch videos, like where it's just one nail, so I can fit them all into one video. Most of these are charity polishes. They are all available right now, I believe, for $5 each. So in the description box below, I will link the Color Gossip site. I will link their Instagram page as well as my Instagram page where you can see more swatches of everything from today's video. So, like I said, 30 some odd polishes to look at today, and let's go ahead and get started. So first we have Backstabber, and this is a deeper vampy red cream. So here is one coat of Backstabber. This has a really good, really smooth formula. It is pretty opaque here on this first coat. Not completely opaque, so I am going to go in for a second coat. The formula on this is very easy to use, no running or pooling or anything like that. This one will also dry really glossy on its own, so you don't necessarily need a glossy top coat unless you want it to last a long period of time. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Gold Today, Save Tomorrow, and this is a clear base packed with gold hex glitter. Here's one coat of Gold Today, Save Tomorrow over Backstabber. You will have to do a little bit of manipulating to get these glitters to spread out evenly across the nail, potentially 2 coats depending on the look you're going for. I'm just trying to do the dabbing method in any kind of bald spots. This one will dry a little bit textured, and you'll want a glossy top coat to finish it off to smooth everything out, as well as either a peel off base coat or pure acetone when removing it. Since it is glitter, it's a little bit difficult. So there is one coat. Next up we have Slice of Heaven, and this is what I would describe as almost a neon red, and it is a jelly-ish polish. Here's our first coat of Slice of Heaven, and this goes on really smooth and evenly as well. It's very easy to use, no running or pooling or anything like that either. It also will dry very glossy on its own. This is completely opaque here in 2 coats. I didn't have any kind of issues with staining with this one on my cuticles or on my nail. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have High Heels, High Hopes, and this is like a watermelon-y pink cream, and here it is next to Slice of Hope. They are pretty similar, but one's a jelly, one is a cream, and then one is more pink than red. Here's our first coat of High Heels, High Hopes, and this covers really well here on the first coat. Depending on your application, you can maybe get away with 1 coat on this. I am going to show you what 2 looks like today, and that is completely opaque for me. Again, no running or pooling with this one, and it is also going to dry very glossy on its own as well. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Rise and Grind, and this is an orangey red, and then here it is with High Heels, High Hopes, and Slice of Heaven, just because they are kind of all in the same family, but not even close in color, but I figured while I'm here, I'll show you that. Here's our first coat of Rise and Grind. And this one is more of a jelly polish as opposed to the previous creams that we've looked at, so it is a little bit more sheer here on this first coat. It is going to build up really nicely though in 3. The formula on this is really good. Again, no running or pooling. I know on 2 coats on camera it looks fine, but I could definitely still see my nail line in person, so I am going to show you what 3 looks like today. Again, this one does dry very glossy on its own. You'll want a top coat if you want it to last any length of time. I did have issues with this staining my skin when removing though, so just bear that in mind. So there is 3 coats. Up next we have Not a Size 6, and this is a light pastel yellow cream. Here is our first coat of Not a Size 6, and this one, the formula is a little bit on the thinner side. It also is much more patchy on this first coat than anything we've looked at today so far. It's not difficult to work with though. I didn't necessarily have any running or pooling. I just had to make sure to work in thinner coats as I didn't want those things. This does take 3 careful coats to be completely opaque. You will want to kind of float your brush to make that happen. Otherwise you will create more bald spots and patching. So there is 3 coats. Next up we have Candy Coated, and this is a clear base packed with every color flake possible. They're not the shifting ultra chrome flakes, they are just a rainbow of flakies. Here is one coat of Candy Coated over not a size 6. The glitter payout on this is okay. I do wish there was a little bit more, but it can be built up if you want more. I just wouldn't have chosen a 3-coater to layer it over if that was the case. You'll want a top coat to smooth everything out for this one, and it is going to be slightly difficult to remove, so there's one coat. Up next we have Go Shopping, and this is a super light pastel green jelly. Here's our first coat of Go Shopping, and this has much the same formula as Not a Size 6 had. It's a little bit patchy. You'll want to work in thinner coats to avoid running and pulling. Again, for this one, you'll want to kind of float your brush to try to avoid any kind of patchiness or bald spots. The formula on this is pretty good though. If you work in those thinner coats, you're not going to have any running or pulling issues with this either. This one again is going to dry very glossy on its own. I didn't have any kind of staining up around the skin with this one either. So this is completely opaque in 3 careful coats. So there is our 3 coats. Up next we have Earth Angel, and this is a super light pastel green cream. And just for color comparisons, here it is next to Go Shopping. They are extremely similar, but again, one is a jelly and one is a cream. Here's our first coat of Earth Angel. And as I was saying, this one is the jelly formula to the last polish. Pretty easy to work with. I didn't have any complaints as far as running or pooling. It is a little bit thicker than the last polish, but it is much more sheer. This one's also going to dry very glossy on its own. Once it is built up, you do again have to kind of float your brush and do careful coats if you want to avoid the patchiness that tends to come with this polish. So there is 3 coats. Up next we have Neista, and this is another light green cream, but this one is, let me actually grab one of the other 2. This one is a touch darker than the previous 2 we looked at. Here's our first coat of Neista, and this one also has that jelly-ish formula, pretty sheer here on this first coat. It is one that's going to have to be built up. The formula on this is good though. It's not too thick or too thin. It is very easy to work with. Again, you're going to want to float your brush to avoid as many patchy spots as possible once this is built up. This one's going to dry down glossy on its own. You'll want a top coat for longevity purposes only. Nothing in here stained me when I was removing. I didn't keep it on for more than a couple of hours though. So there is 3 coats. Next up we have Eco-Friendly, and this is a little bit darker of a green cream. This one does lean more grassy green than the others have. Here's our first coat of Eco-Friendly, and this one again has that jelly-ish formula, very nice and squishy on the nails. All of these jellies though do seem to apply pretty patchy, with the exception of this one. So this is the only one that I could see potentially being a jelly sandwich, but it is a little bit too opaque here on 2 coats. This one's going to dry pretty glossy on its own. You'll want a top coat for longevity purposes only, and there's 2 coats. Up next we have Forever Green, and this is somewhere between a pea green and a chartreuse yellow, and this is a cream. Here's our first coat of Forever Green. This does cover pretty well here on this first coat considering what it is. It is a lighter shade. It is almost neon-esque. The formula on this is really good. No running or pooling. I also wore this one for a couple of days with no base coat on my Cindy hand, and I didn't have any kind of staining. Anywhere between 2 and 3 coats for this one. I was wearing it for the day, so I did go in for 3 coats. It'll dry glossy on its own. You'll want a top coat though to make it last if you wanted to wear it for longer than I did. So there is 3 coats. Next up we have Baby Bump, and this is a light pastel blue cream. Here's our first coat of Baby Bump, and I fully expected this one to be much more sheer considering the polishes that we've swatched thus far, but this covers pretty well here on this first coat. I am going to build it up with a second coat. This does dry again pretty glossy on its own. You'll want a top coat to make it last though. The formula on this is really good also, no running or pulling or anything like that. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Royal Blue, and this is a clear base packed with these blue shredded flakes. Here's 1 coat of Royal Baby over Baby Bump. I did have to go back in for a couple extra dips to get my brush fully coated for this one. This is going to lie pretty evenly. You do have to manipulate those flakes just a little bit to get them to spread out evenly across the nail, and you'll want a top coat to smooth it out, but it's not hard to remove. Next up we have Patriotic Blue, and this is a navy blue cream. Here's our first coat of Patriotic Blue. The formula on this is, again, really good, smooth, easy to work with, no running or pooling or anything like that. You don't have to be super cautious about working in very thin coats to avoid pooling either. It is completely opaque here in 2 coats for me. It does dry very glossy on its own. I would highly recommend a base coat for this one. I didn't have any staining, but I also just swatched it, so this one's a potential stainer. There's 2 coats. So up next we have All That Jazz, and this is a clear base. It's got these brighter blue hex glitter and then these smaller gold micro glitter throughout it. Here's 1 coat of All That Jazz. You get a ton of glitter out without having to do anything special, holding the bottle upside down or anything like that. You will have to manipulate the glitters to lie evenly, and this one's going to dry pretty textured and hard to remove, so there's 1 coat. Up next we have Bora Bora, and this is a lavender purple with a silver shimmer. Here's our first coat of Bora Bora, and this one does cover pretty well here on this first coat, all things considered. It's a light color, it's a shimmery shade. I would have expected this one to be much more sheer on the first coat than it is, but it does cover pretty well, and it is completely opaque here in 2 coats. This one's going to dry down a little bit dull, so you want a nice glossy top coat to finish that off. Nothing in here is going to dry textured, and nothing in here is going to be difficult to remove. Next up is Very Carrie, and this is a purple periwinkle cream. Here's our first coat of Very Carrie, and this one has more of a squishy kind of feel to it, more of that jelly consistency. The formula on this is really good though, no running or pulling here either. This one is going to be completely opaque in 2 coats for me. Depending on your application, you may want to go in for a 3rd coat. This one does have a tendency to give you those like bald spots, and this one's going to dry really glossy on its own as well. So there is 2 coats. I lost my bottle shot for this one somehow, but here is Remember Me. This is a plummy base with a strong shimmer to it. Great 2-coat formula, very beautiful, easy to work with, no complaints here. Again, completely opaque in 2 coats. You'll want a top coat to shine it out because it does dry a little bit dull, but nothing in here is going to dry textured and nothing in here is going to be difficult to remove. So there is 2 coats. So up next is Socialite, and this is somewhere between a brown and a red with like a pink flash. And it's got these like scattered hollow pieces and then a strong shimmer. Here is our first coat of Socialite. And this one is pretty sheer here on this first coat. The formula is pretty good though. Again, no running or pulling, not too thick or too thin, anything like that. I am going to show you what 2 coats looks like today. Depending on your application, you may want to go in for a 3rd coat. I was very, very on the edge of needing a 3rd coat. You'll want a glossy top coat to finish this off as it does dry dull, but nothing in here is textured or hard to remove, so there's 2 coats. So up next we have a Love Child, and this is a light pastel lilac cream. Here's our first coat of Love Child, and this one is going to be pretty patchy here on this first coat. It is one that you're going to have to build up and again use that floating hand, a nice light hand, not too much pressure to get completely opaque. The formula on this is good though, no running or pulling, not too thick or too thin or anything like that. I am showing you what 2 coats looks like here. You'll want a nice glossy top coat to finish this off and 3 coats to build it up to complete opacity. This is kind of to be expected though with this kind of formula, this shade. It's not easy to do in 2 coats, but there's 3. Next up we have Shallow, and this is a putty colored cream. Here's our first coat of Shallow, and this one feels more like acrylic, where It's got that like milky-ish base to it. I feel like there should be glitter in this one. This one builds up nicely in 2 coats. It's not completely opaque, it is still a little bit patchy, so I am going to go in for a 3rd coat. Again, you'll want to use a nice light hand to float your brush across this. The formula on this is not too thick or too thin. It is actually pretty nice, and this one will dry really glossy on its own as well. So there is 3 coats. Up next we have OMG, and this is a nude jelly. It's one of those kind of like French manicure shades. Here's our first coat of OMG, and this one is just a wash of color on the nail. I'm going to show you what 2 coats looks like today. I didn't continue on to try to build it up to full opacity because I know for a fact it doesn't. But the formula on this is good, not too thick or too thin. It is a little bit patchy, and you'll want a top coat to finish this off. So there is 2 coats. Next up we have Heart of Gold, and this is like an antique gold shimmery shade. Here's our first coat of Heart of Gold, and the formula here is pretty good as well. It's a little bit on the thinner side. You do have to worry about running and pooling if you work in thicker coats. The brush strokes that are in here do go away as it dries. This is completely opaque here in 2 coats for me. You'll want a glossy top coat because it does dry down a little bit dull though. So there is 2 coats. So up next we have Swipe the Card, and this is a black that dries to a matte finish. Here's our first coat of Swipe the Card. The formula on this is pretty good. It actually felt a little bit lumpy for some reason. I think there was some dried up polish maybe clunked up in my brush. This one is pretty opaque though. It does take 2 coats to be completely opaque. I would highly recommend just buying a black polish though and using a matte top coat. The matte component to this does take a long time to dry down. So just bear that in mind. There's 2 coats. And lastly for today we have Rumors, and this is a black that dries to a glossy finish. Here's our first coat of Rumors, and this one covers pretty well here in this first coat as well. It's not as opaque as the matte black one was, but it does cover completely in 2 coats also, and this one is going to dry down very glossy on its own. So there is 2 coats. I also have their matte top coat to share with you today, so I am going to choose 2 random polishes to layer this over today. So here I am layering Matty Cakes over Forever Green. This is a good formula. It's a little bit on the thin side, so you do have to be careful when you're working with it to not flood your cuticles, but the only complaint I really have about this matte top coat is that it also takes forever to dry down. And then here I'm going to apply it over Remember Me. Again, it's just a long drying matte, but it is a long lasting matte top coat, so it's not going to chip easily on you, but it does take a good amount of time to dry down. And I'm trying to blow on it to make it dry faster, and it's just not going anywhere. So there is 1 coat. So given that there were so many polishes, I do have some standouts. The first one being Forever Green. This is a very unique color in my collection. I can really appreciate that at this point, considering how many nail polishes I have seen in my day. This one is very unique. It had a great formula. I really like Forever Green. And then my other ones are the combinations. So the combination of Baby Bump and Royal Blue. This is really beautiful. It's something that I will definitely get use of out of the winter, the 2 together. The Baby Bump, the light blue, has a really good formula for being such a light pastel shade. And then Royal Baby, it does take a couple dips back into the bottle to get like an even application. But I would happily put up with that because it does look like Sully, and I can really appreciate that. And then the other combination being Patriotic Blue and All That Jazz. It's a very mermaid-esque combination to me, so I really like this one, which kind of blows my mind that there's essentially 4 blue shades in my favorites. But yeah, these are all my favorites from today's video. And that is it. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of these polishes. Let me know if you plan on picking any of them up, and let me know what your favorite was. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you'd like to see more from me. I will talk to you again next time.